Before we dive into today's episode, just a quick word from the sponsor CWD Pond. Whether or not you're building your new koi pond or you're upgrading your existing setup, these guys have got you covered with sleeper pond kits, pond windows, pressure pipe and all the essentials you need to build a pond. And for Koi Perspective podcast listeners, you can enjoy 5% off using the discount code TKPP5. Check them out, all the links are down in the description below. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Koi Perspective podcast. Dave's got the giggles again, I can already tell. But we are joined, as usual, by my two legendary co-hosts. I got in trouble last week for giving you not a very good introduction. So yes. We've got the legend that is Simon from up north Koi Pond. How are we doing, Simon?
Yeah, not bad. Cheers, Joe.
And Dave, how are we doing? Are you a bit cold? You've got about 17 layers on.
Do you know what? Because I've been working away, I haven't been in my little office shed thing, so it's trying to warm this place up is near impossible. But yeah, no, I'm all right. I had the giggles, and I'm a bit starstruck because we're on with Syd, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, a man who, to be honest, doesn't need much introduction, Syd. You've been around the koi scene for quite a while. You've done a lot of the BKKS. You've got quite a big involvement in there and obviously been around the show scene. But do you want to give people a little bit of a introduction about how you got into koi to begin with and what your hobbies looked like?
Right. Well, in about 1984, when I was running my swimming pool company, I had to go around and see a customer who was also a friend of mine, and he was all excited. He said, "Come and look at the back, I've got this pond." And I went to his back of his garden, we saw his pond, he had a vegetable filter, and it looked beautiful, because it was brand new, the vegetable filter, obviously, hadn't grown all ragged. So I packed up early that afternoon, went home, started digging the koi pond.
Yeah.
Well, that's all. For the first few years, what I used to do was go to shows to get new koi for the ones that had died.
Yeah.
And it was only when I joined Essex Section Koi Club, that a lady there who was only about 5'2" tall, but she was very fierce. And I don't know if you know Peter Barnes.
Not heard his name.
No, he was a very good koi keeper. And the first meeting was around his house. And when I went there, it was him laying the size of beach to whale on the decking with his hand in the pool, hand feeding the koi, and they were mainly kahaku. So as I was leaving, I said to his wife, "Your husband is really good at keeping koi." And she said, drawing herself up to 5'4", "We don't keep koi, we keep water." And in that moment, the light bulb come on over my head. For years, I'd been killing koi, unfortunately, I have to admit that. And then suddenly I thought, well, here's me. I've been dealing with very advanced water parameters in the pool industry and designing water parameter control equipment for, at that time, it must have been over 20 years, and I'd never made the connection that I should keep the water in my koi pond as good as the water I kept in customer swimming pools.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a change. After that, I became, I don't like to use the word expert. I'm just a bloke who knows a lot that will answer questions and put the hind legs off a donkey. But since then, I've been prolific for the koi keeping industry. I joined the BKKS. I passed loads of exams from Koi Organisation International, and consequently, they said, "Do you want to be one of our instructors?" And now I teach water quality, advanced filtration, anoptic filtration, advanced nutrition, and the latest course I'm writing is a course on advanced bacteriology.
You do have another alias online, don't you? Manky Sanky is what you've become to known as. I've always wanted to ask you where the name came from, because obviously Sanky is a common variety.
As soon as I joined Essex Action Koi Club, I found that people were asking questions, and there was me thinking it was really easy. Why didn't they know that? You know, because it was basic water parameters, pH, pH, ammonia and stuff like that. And so I sort of tentatively started answering so as not to get thought of as a big head, just joined a club and wants to show off. And they asked me to write magazine articles. And I've got a sense of humour, and I always think if you use a sense of humour in what you're doing, you can smuggle in a lot of technical stuff. People are so busy laughing that they don't realise they've actually learned something. At the end of an article, one of the articles I wrote about koi keeping was join a club first and people will tell you what to buy and what not to buy. And the final bit in the article was, but unfortunately I did it the other way round. I bought my koi, then joined the club, so I'll be stuck with my Manky Sanky and his motley mates. So after that, I got known through the koi club as Manky Sanky. Forums became popular and I needed a username, so what else? Manky Sanky. And it's grown ever since.
God, Dave.
I was just going to say,
like I said, I can talk the hind legs off donkeys. And if you ask me questions and I explain, well, it's your fault. Don't ask questions.
I like it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Anyone that's not been to the Manky, just go to Google, put in Manky Sanky. So if it doesn't matter what level you are at the hobby, if you're thinking of getting a koi pond or you've just got a koi pond and you're looking to learn, go and visit Manky Sanky. Put it into Google. Honestly, and I think, Syd, you must have spent countless hours creating that website, because the amount of information on there, it's unrivaled from any other website, I think it's safe to say.
And it's all true, I guarantee it. And it took months to write it, because I write technical stuff very quickly, but then I have to not dumb it down, but simplify it so that normal human beings can actually understand it. The average koi keeper is an advanced chemist.
I think that's the key as well, because when I was first coming into the koi hobby, you yourself, Syd, were actually a big influence on me coming into the hobby. You know, being a novice coming into it, it was difficult to try and find good information, and I took influence from a lot of your work in the forums and via your website. So I think that it was a big help for someone such as myself.
Yeah,
I've been to lots of talks where someone has stood at the front and their knowledge is impeccable. They can stand there, stare over the heads of the audience and recite what are like pages of technical stuff. But if they looked down and actually looked at the audience, they would see that most of them are sitting there doodling on pads or looking out the windows until it's time to clap politely and go away. What I do, being as I think that a presenter, lecturer, or anybody giving a talk is there to inform, not impress. So I very rarely use technical stuff unless I accompany it by a simple explanation. And normally I look at people and I see who's not paying attention and sort of ask myself why and try and engage them. And I get nothing out of it, just the pleasure of being able to pass on technical stuff to other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about yourself, Syd, is the amount of information that you've put out over the years, just to help, koi hobbyists that are coming through, to give them as much information as possible to help them grow in the hobby. I think it's such a fantastic thing, and not just myself. I know loads and loads of hobbyists will have benefited from your work in past, because I think in today's age, in koi hobbyists, there's a lot that don't really want to help people. They'd sooner just brush them off to the side.
Yeah.
Or
so.
There are the Facebook experts who say, I did this once on my fish and my fish are happy. And they use that to show everybody else, or to prove to everybody else, that that's how everyone should keep their fish. I'll come on to that. I've got some questions that you have asked, or you guys have asked.
Yeah,
and a few related subjects of my own. And what I did was pull some pictures together.
Is there a particular place from one of the questions you feel like we should start at in particular?
I'd like to, if it's okay, before we start going into the stuff that Syd wants to go into, I'd like to start by asking him a question on flow rates in biological filters. Talking about flow rates, is retention time in biological filters that important? Obviously, biological filters are different sizes to different size ponds. So is it important that the water has enough time to contact the media, or is it a case where you can allow the water to run that bit faster because the biomedia will catch it on the next time round?
Simple answer. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. I've got two pictures that show that. The one on the left of the screen, the biofilm, substrate filter media, is how the bacteria link up on a substrate, and the substrate is basically, it's a technical name for your media surface.
Yeah.
And I've got blue ones for nitrosomonas, red ones for nitrobacter, and because other bacteria get in there as well and perform a very important function in the matrix, I've got other bacteria in green. Now, they link themselves. They don't pack one top of the other. They link themselves slightly apart with polysaccharide links. Now, polysaccharide links, you can think of it as like sticky rubber bands. So each of these bacteria have got a sticky rubber band joining to another bacteria or the surface. Right. Can you all understand that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Now the water flows over the top, and it also percolates through with the little arrows going in and percolating through the bacteria, yeah? Now, it doesn't really matter too much what the water flow across the surface is in speed, because it will percolate slowly through the bacteria. But what you mustn't do is have the water flow too fast, because if you look at the picture on the right, it's how bacteria sort of develop and grow. Now, right to left is a single bacteria on the surface. That's it, yeah, an arrow pointing to that. Next to that is initial adhesion. That bacteria joins to the surface with its little sticky rubber bands, and then it grows. And bacteria grow by increasing their length and splitting in half.
Yeah.
And then the new ones separate, increasing length and split in half. And they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And in initial adhesion, they are all within that yellowy slime matrix. Proliferation is really more of what I've just said. They get bigger and bigger. Not much more to say about that isn't technical. Maturation, bacteria have a sense where they can talk to each other. It's called quorum sensing. And what it is, they pass out sort of chemical messages into the mids, and other bacteria sort of follow it, really like ants in a nest.
Mm-hmm.
One lays a chemical trail and everyone else follows it. So maturation is where they do this technical stuff, which we call quorum sensing, which is basically bunging out some chemicals in amongst all the others, and it grows bigger and bigger and bigger until, like a overinflated balloon, it bursts and the bacteria are sort of dispersed out into the water flow.
Yeah.
Now, if the water flow is too fast, they get washed away. If not, if you look from the right, the bacteria paths, one will land back on the substrate again, like the first one I was talking about.
Yeah.
And obviously it can't land where something else is, but those that are lucky enough, like seeds from a prolific flower, if they fall somewhere that's advantageous to them, they'll grow. And you get in a single bacteria, initial adhesion, proliferation, maturation, then dispersal from there, and that's how our colonies multiply.
Can I ask you a question here, Syd?
Yep.
So, if you are, for a lot of koi hobbyists out there, there's a lot of people aerating their biochambers. Does that make it harder for the initial adhesion because it's an aerated chamber?
Okay. Now, different media and different biofilter sort of chambers have different characteristics which affects the water flow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if your water parameters are as near perfect as you can get them, leave it alone. If they're not, increase or decrease the flow rate a little, and then watch the parameters for a week. If they improve, you're doing it right. If they don't improve, you're going in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
So if you up the flow rate and the figures get worse, take it down a little bit from what it was.
Yeah.
And monitor the parameters.
You will tend to see in when I've been in Japan, for example, and they'll have their biological chambers with a static ceramic media, for example, and that will be unaerated, so there'll be no aeration going on. There will almost be like a maturity to that, like a film, a biological film, a biological matter, and it almost looks like dirt. And I presume from lack of aeration or lack of water flow, because the water flow is a lot less, that there's like a build up there, and a lot of people would view that as a bad build up of you know. And I wonder if you could perhaps talk us through that.
Well, like I said, different media has different characteristics. Some are friendly to bacteria. K1 is a bit unfriendly to bacteria initially. It's a good media if you dip it in potassium permanganate to roughen up the surface and get the first few bacteria to settle on it, and you get the initial adhesion and so forth from the dispersal. And once you get that initial biofilm going, then more bacteria will form in between the initial adhesion sort of groups of bacteria, and it will proliferate and grow.
Do you ever find that plastic media can be a bit unfavourable to bacteria such as Nitrobacter and things like that? Because I know a hell of a lot of people have said before in past that they've had problems with, like background levels of nitrite and things like that.
Yeah. Well, bacteria, an expression often used, they're neither house proud nor are they home slob. They'll live anywhere. But some surfaces are hard for them to get a grip on. And plastic surfaces are very smooth compared with like the other thing, bits of pipe and hair rollers and bottle tops and things like that. They've all got a very slightly rough surface, and the bacteria can get into what look like them. They're great big chasms. To us, they're very slight imperfections that we could barely feel with our fingertips. After that, they're away.
So, another question on this. So, the dispersal part of this diagram where you've got here, Sid, if, say, for example, if there's an aerated chamber where the dispersal means that because it's aerated or somebody's got a high level of flow, that kind of dispersal where it's not necessarily getting the adhesion and it's returning to the pond. So there's a lot of, bacteria there that's not reattaching itself to something. Could that increase the load on a koi's metabolism? So is it something that the koi then have to deal with, that they're swimming through because there's dispersal, that the koi are then swimming in a pond with a lot of different bacteria floating around because of the biological filtration having high flow and aeration, or not?
Okay, your pond water is full of trillions of bacteria, literally trillions, thousands of millions, thousands of billions. And there are all sorts of different types. There will be some pathogenic bacteria that are looking for something organic to munch into. Now, most of the bacteria will be friendly bacteria doing stuff. Now, what they do, well, if you read the books on microbiology that I've read, they look like old-fashioned telephone books. No pictures or writing. How they do it is pretty wonderful. You don't want me to go into that now. There isn't enough time before the next podcast after this one.
So, Sid, then, if we take, for example, K1, so one of the things that we've seen fairly modern now is from Awaza is you've got size, isn't it, the pond pads?
Yeah.
So with those, when we go into the dispersal stage, one would imagine that because it's a pad, although it hasn't got the crevices that, say, K1, K plus, whatever it be, has got, that surely promotes the initial adhesion again, doesn't it, the pond pad, because it's got a larger area.
All the bacteria that don't land on the surface, that get washed away, can still do the bit in nitrogen cycle, whether it's ammonia to nitrite or nitrate to nitrate, or any of the other things that different bacteria are doing. They can still do that while they're floating. They're just more efficient if they can get into a colony on a biofilm, which is why on the left-hand picture, the green bacteria are hitching a ride in amongst our friendly Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter, which non-chemists, non-microbiologists will sort of balk at some of the names. What I do in talks, lectures, and even in the stuff I write for KOI on my courses, I say you can call them the ammonia bug and the nitrite bug. Now that makes sense to a lot more people than Nitrosomonas a nitrobacter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the bugs will still do whatever they want to do. They take in the nutrients they want and get rid of the nutrients they don't want, and the next bacteria might make use of it. They'll still do that while they're floating, but it's better if they can get initial adhesion and build a colony. The quorum sensing, the fact that they talk to each other with chemicals, in simple language, will allow them to process the whatever pollutant they like for dinner, but will allow them to process that much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Syd, one of the products that's quite popular in the hobby at the minute is lactoacid bacteria. How do you feel, or how beneficial do you feel that a product like that is to the environment, to the biofilters, or to the fish?
He's laughing, which is worrying.
Or with the enzymes that's released from them, does it have any effect on the environment?
Right. Do you believe that the little blue sparkles in washing powder do things, and that you can take a rag when you see your wife coming up the kitchen, up the drive, or up the garden path, pour some clean liquid on it, wipe it round the floor and the water, and wipe it round the floor and the walls, and you leave little gleaming sparkles behind? If you do, you can believe what you like about lactobacteria. Okay, now before I get sued, Lactobacteria is from the Lactobacillus casei genus, sort of family, and the let's just call it Lactobacteria. I try to use simple names that people can remember rather than complicated names which they won't even understand, let alone remember. Now, there are about 100 trillion bacteria in our gut, and these Lactobacteria are one of them. So they can live in anaerobic environments like the human gut or the koi gut. Now, they are used to ferment dairy products like cheese and yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to pull them into your pond, they're non-sporing. Now, sporing is when a bacteria finds an environmental condition it doesn't like. Some will die, others will form into spores, which are like bacteria suspended animation capsules. If conditions improve, they can wake up and start doing what they normally do. Now, because lactobacteria are non-sporing, if you put them somewhere they don't like, they'll just die. So if you get some that you want to put in the pool, you've got to have a fresh culture. Because the reason why filtrate bacteria are smelly, smell like rotten eggs, is when they put a bacteria culture into a tin, jar, packet, whatever, they add a quick dose of hydrogen sulfide. That smelly, eggy smell gas. Now, what that does to bacteria, it sends them into like a sort of a sleep, but they won't stay in that sleep forever. They'll slowly decompose and die. It is very slowly. They can last a long time in a jar or pot. But if you're going to use any filter starter or lactobacteria culture, what you really want to do is get a fresh one. And also, one that hasn't been transported by truck in the freezing cold or in a storage room out the back in the daylight in a koi dealer's where it some beats down through the windows and it gets hot, and then they put it on the shelves and you buy it. The longer they have to put up with those conditions, non-spoiling bacteria will be decomposing. So buy fresh.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because to say buy fresh, the likelihood of actually knowing you've got fresh, given that most things have to travel in this country because infrastructure's pretty poor, there's actually a very slim chance of you having a fresh batch delivered to your door, isn't it?
Very low.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to be fresh, and if people ask me to talk, I say go to a koi dealer that's got a good turnover in products. Because they'll buy stuff in, they'll store it, they'll fill up the shelves of it, then the shelves will get emptied, so they'll put more in from the store, and it'll get sold quick, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of really weird statements. I was looking some of them up, because I knew you were going to ask that question. They're said to stabilise the pH. Someone has picked up the word acid and thought pH. Yeah, it would bring your pH down if you put acid in the pond. How can a bacteria stabilise your pH? Well, if you can come up with that answer, you can believe it. Another thing is they prevent fungal infections in koi, I read, in quite a few websites. Well, think about it logically. That's mainly my job, is to take an idea and think about it logically and develop it. Well, thinking about fungal infections logically, let's consider oranges. They contain vitamin C. If I eat oranges, the vitamin C will do some good to my immune system. If my immune system is better, I might not get athlete's foot or fungal infections under my nails. So now we can go all around the internet saying oranges prevent athlete's foot. Exactly. So lactobacteria, if they're in the gut doing something useful, they might improve the immune system.
As long as it's a fresh batch.
But as for if you've got fungus, pour some lactobacteria in. I would prepare to be sued on that one, because that's a right laughing.
Well, I think a lot of them state that they sort of outcompete the pathogenic bacteria, don't they? Because they supposedly...
Yeah, they could do. There's another bacteria that's eating stuff that stops something else eating it.
It's a little bit of a side point, and not really a question to kind of put you on the spot with, but you've been in koi for quite a while, Syd. Have you seen like more and more bizarre claims from products like more recently? Like,
not much.
No, it's just
I love them. Just like I love conspiracy theories on the internet. They're really good for a laugh.
Yeah. To me, it seems like every month there's a new product with a new bizarre claim on it.
Well, this is the thing. If you sell things, then the more things you sell, the better it is.
Yeah.
Presumably, you sell things for a profit. So if you've got a good line in selling product A, well, just add in product B and find some reason why it's good if your customers buy that.
Yeah.
Just like what I said with washing powder. Do you believe the little blue sparkles in washing powder do anything? Well, if you make washing powder, people will buy it. But then you can say, oh, look, we put little blue speckles in it. and that does, and you come up with a load of things that it does, and people buy that as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's really interesting.
Manufacturers' sales detail really maximises what something could do, and sort of explains why it's a benefit to the people you want to buy it.
What's your thoughts on clays, Syd? I know we've got some slides to bring up about different things to do with that. So clays in the koi pond, how do they affect the environment, or do they have any benefit to the pigmentation of koi?
I refer to clay as similar to a multivitamin multivitamin supplement. If your diet is poor, then multivitamins will improve your health. If nothing is deficient in your diet, then your kidney will just wheel it out in urine. So, relating that back to koi, if the makeup water and the diet lacks a mineral A, and the clay has mineral A in it, then that mineral will improve your koi. If you've got plenty of mineral A and all the other minerals that you need, B, to Z, and on to infinity, because we need trace things, trace amounts of very many vitamins and minerals. If the clay's got in what your supply is lacking in any of those minerals, then the clay will improve it. Yep. Lots of dealers use clay. Breeders as well. On my website is a story. Is clay beneficial?
So is this almost an indication that a higher quality koi food is more suited for a complete diet for a fish? Is what you're saying?
I can talk about that forever. If we just finish clay, and then I'll talk about koi food.
Yep.
Come on, Joe. Crying out loud. Stop.
Took pictures to show chromatophores sumi bunched and chromatophores sumi dispersed. And I'll tell you something that clay does. Right. Okay. The first picture shows, I'm pointing with my mouse and it's not working. Right, the first picture shows low pH and high pH. And melanin, which is the black pigment, in a melanophore, which is a black pigment cell, bunches together. And as you can see, the sumi, the black, in that diagram is all bunched in the centre. And so the centre looks okay, but the rest of it looks weak. Now, that's not an exact representation of a chromatophore, a colour cell in a koi, but it's a sort of simplified diagram of how they work. So, a low pH and low GH hardness is not good for sumi. Right? If you look at the picture on the right, high pH and GH, melanin in the melanophore disperses evenly, making it appear strong. One representation, a higher general hardness, the hardness of water, and a high pH improves sumi. Wonderful, ain't it?
Yeah.
Well, I had.
Hang on, I have to say,
there's a book coming here.
There's a very big but, yeah. Get rid of those two pictures and put the next two up. High pH and high GH makes this pigment astaxanthin in the erythrophore, so it makes the red pigment in the red pigment cell bunched together, which is the opposite to what happened to the sumi. And you want a low pH and low GH to make it spread out.
No, see, in many cases, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So it's about striking that balance.
Right, okay. So if you get rid of those,
Yeah.
Joe, chromatophores group.
Yeah.
You're doing an excellent job here, Joe.
Yeah.
I don't know how big you can make that, but if you see the first picture is low pH and low GH, and you get poor sumi, good sumi for high pH, but it's exactly the opposite for Benny. Low pH gives you a good Benny, high pH, less Benny. Now, one thing I have to say is you can't turn a garden centre koi into a grand champion. So you only see a marked difference in koi that have the capability to produce really good quality coloration, colour development.
I was just going to ask if a lot of it is built into the genetics of the fish.
It's what, sorry?
I was just going to ask if a lot of it is built into the genetics of the fish.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, if you take your average cheap koi, especially garden centre koi and rejects, then no matter what you do, hard or soft water, you ain't going to change them. They'll have pretty colours, maybe not in the right place, and not very good colours, but they will look pretty, and that's all you're ever going to get. You couldn't show them. If you've got show quality koi, then yes, high pH, high GH will be good for sumi, like Shiros, and low pH, low KH will be good for kahakus. Now, I've struggled to figure out where Sanky or Rochelle fits in that, but presumably it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, so it's, for someone like myself, so I have really low KH out the tap, so I buffer up with sodium bicarbonate. The drawbacks with that, so I can manage my KH, so I could manage the one part of it, but the problem with sodium bicarbonate, isn't it, is obviously the pH then rises to the natural level of sodium bicarbonate, which I think is about 8.3, is it 8.2, whatever it is?
8.4
is it 8.4? So yeah, so I've always got a higher pH in my pond. So what's the best way then to obviously manage KH and buffer that up, but not create a high pH, which is then a negative to the red pigment cell?
Right. Treat your pond like a Japanese mud pond. Now, they have very low pH, sometimes as low as 6.5, and they have virtually no KH whatsoever, or GH whatsoever. Because they're mainly fed from streams that come off of mountains, and the mountains are made of granite, so nothing dissolves in them. So anything will lower the pH. 6.5 is okay for koi, and some people sort of prefer that number, but much lower, and the koi start to suffer from acidosis, acid of the blood. So because they got this continuous trickle, well, quite a good flow of water coming in one end and flowing out the other end down to the fields that the farmers really appreciate, the wastewater that comes out of mud ponds, because it's continually being topped up, the pH can't fall much below 7. So if you can replicate that in a pond, what you would need is RO and a very fast water change. So you need to pour a lot of RO in one end and let it flow out the other.
Mm.
So you would have a controlled pH and GH. You control by adding, how to explain it simply, a proportion of RO water, which has got nothing in it, and tap water, which usually has got some minerals in it. And you adjust the sort of mix like we would adjust a hot and cold tap to get something in between that you prefer. Yeah? So by altering the amount of normal dechlorinated tap water that mixes in with your RO water, you can control its level very, very precisely, because your mains water won't change, and RO water is 0, so you've got a mix of the two, and that will stay the same.
I think that's what a lot of the recycling RO systems are doing at the minute, isn't it, Joe? I know you've got one, haven't you?
I mean, you pretty much get the water out your reverse osmosis unit at a pH of like 6.9 kH of around 1, don't you? So that generally that's, I am not an advocate of like running it at that, my pond at that. I generally try to keep it at KH like 2, 3 and a pH 7.5, which I've found is like a neutral balance. But I've come off the back of having my koi pond at a pH of like 9.2. And that's where I feel like we should maybe put an asterisk next to the Sumi development at high pH, because I think there maybe is you might give me some more info on this, Syd, but there must be some form of threshold involved there where if you go too far with your pH, it becomes like a health concern, and that's where
I'd imagine it. Not only just that, I'd imagine it makes it incredibly difficult for growing your fish. If you put in a lot of food in, it's not going to help with your, increased ammonia levels, is it?
No.
And then at the other end of the spectrum, something that I was going to ask Syd actually is the effects that are lower KH. So we hear quite often, so I've got a low KH, and a lot of people will say to me that have had low KH as well, I've struggled to get my media to establish. Sores, ulcers, etc. struggle. They take a lot longer to heal in low KH. Is there truth to that, Syd? Does KH directly correlate to bacteria health in media and the koi's health in terms of being able to repair itself?
Now, the ammonia bug, Nitrosomonas, doesn't get rid of ammonia and turn it to nitrate as some kind of favour to us. What they are is a bacteria that can use ammonia as a nutrient. I won't explain how, but people can email me and I will, if anybody is interested. But they don't, the ammonia bug doesn't do the conversion as a favour to us. What it does, it combines ammonia with carbon to get the carbon, because Spock in Star Trek was correct. It's a carbon-based life form. Everything is a carbon-based life form. All life that we know is a carbon-based life form. So what we need to do as human beings, we need to consume carbon, which we do mainly in carbohydrates. I can come on to that afterwards, which is another subject. Well, what bacteria do, they want carbon, and they found that by using ammonia, breaking it up, they can use the energy created from that to get carbon out of the water around them. Now, carbon, if they can get carbonate, they can make carbon out of it. So, bacteria use carbonates out of our pond. KH is carbonates, so in order to have healthy bacteria, you need some carbonates in your water. You need some KH.
Yeah.
Yep.
And is there a specific carbonate level that Nitrosomnus and Nitrobacter prefer? Are they more efficient at a certain level than another?
Okay. If I can finish what I was saying about nitrite bug, that also doesn't do it as a favour. It does it because it can break up nitrite into nitrate and extract carbon. Now, how much carbon do they need? Well, there isn't just an ammonia bug and a nitrite bug. There are millions of the buggers, all different species, and they've all got their individual preferences. Just like if you think about birds in your garden, some eat seeds, some eat worms, some want fruit, and you can't say because you've got loads of seeds in your garden, you're going to get jackdaws. They'll only come if they can get worms. Does that make sense?
Yep, 100%. Yep.
Well, now transfer what you know about birds in the garden to bacteria. There are so many different types of bacteria. You have to get the nutrition right for the bacteria that want to settle in your filter media. Now, I can't sit here and say what you've got in your media, because what I'd have to do is come around your house, take a sample, go home, put it under a microscope and see what shape it is and look for, what it does. And I might be able to determine the species, but if you really want to determine species, you have to go to electron microscopes, which I don't have. So you can't dictate hard and fast rules for all nitrite bugs and all ammonia bugs. What you can do is, like you would in birds, chuck out different types of food and see which one attracts the most birds. In a filter situation, if you transfer that to a filter situation, try different things and see if it improves your parameters. And as I said with clay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But the going back on the clay point, Sid. So a lot of clays don't advertise to raise KH. So is the benefit in increasing the GH with TDS increase with the clay? Is that the benefit there that we're seeing or not?
If I say yes to that, some manufacturer will sue me.
Right, okay, yeah. Okay.
No, it really is a case of if it replaces something that's missing
in the diet,
it will improve them. If it doesn't, it's a waste in the nutrition sense, although clay has a flocculating effect. And flocculating, for people who don't know what flocculation means, it means they've got a slight electromagnetic charge and attract very small particles to stick to them as they sink to the bottom. So they're clearing the water as it goes down.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
If you've got cloudy water, bung in some clay and it will help. On the other hand, if you've got sparkling water, bung in some clay and it won't do any good.
So your own pond, Sid, what do you keep your KH and pH at?
Right. I had to give up koi keeping myself because I spend so much time teaching others that I wouldn't have time to look at my own fish. I could rush out in the morning and bung in a handful of food because I'm retired and I don't have to go to work, obviously, so I can bung out as often as I need it, but I wouldn't get a chance to sit and enjoy them. Right. My wife has a pond of her own, and she's very jealous of it. And it's her pond, and I mustn't touch it unless she wants me to get my hands wet and clean the filters or do anything else that she doesn't want to do. Now, at the moment, because our water comes out of our tap in lumps of liquid concrete, with very high pH, and it hovers around 8.48. So I've no need to add to that any bicarbonate of soda, sodium bicarbonate. Some people call it baking powder, not. All the Americans call it baking powder. But that contains sort of stuff in it that make the cakes rise better. So I prefer sodium bicarbonate, or as we might call it, bicarbonate of soda.
Yeah. So we've probably got about 20 minutes left before I get summoned by my missus. Do we want to
talk the hind legs off a donkey?
We need to make this a series, Joe.
I
We need to carry this on.
We're going to have to have Syd back on. And
I think so.
If anyone's listening or watching this, that you feel like we've missed a question, because I'm sure there'll be people shouting at the screen, ask this question. So drop a comment, or drop us an email, and we can maybe try and get Syd back on to answer a few more questions in future. But I think
if Syd's happy to, of course.
Oh yeah, of course. If we haven't put him off on the first attempt, yeah. But we will be releasing this podcast as we're just about to head out of winter and go into spring, and so I thought it'd be nice for you to maybe discuss like the feeding regime coming into the springtime.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
You're on the right. Have you ever walked past a lake in winter and seen a notice like that telling the fish they mustn't eat? Yeah. No, nor have I. Right. So, carp evolve in water where they are all winter. The reason why they do this is because carp don't go into hibernation. There's a difference between hibernation and torpor. Hibernation is where you get yourself fat, go to sleep, don't do anything, and just live off your fat.
That's what I do at Christmas.
If you keep bears, that's what they do. Or go into what we call torpor, which is where they use minimum energy to stay alive, but not much more than that. Now, what do they need to stay alive? Well, their heart needs to beat, the gills need to work, osmoregulation is a huge energy consumption. They must stay osmoregulated, or they blow up like overfilled balloons and burst before spring arrives. So they're using energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, for people who want to know that stuff. But it's a form of stored energy that they can put in their body. When it's all gone, the way they make more, well, I won't tell you the name, it's too late to talk about. No, they make more by converting muscle protein, which is why in humans, if we're starving, we get thinner and our muscles get weaker. Yeah, and the same thing happens to koi, or would happen to carp if we didn't allow them to feed. So you have to, if you want to treat your koi in a natural way, you have to feed them when they're actively looking, and you feed very small amounts. Now, I'll say that again. When they're actively looking and in very small amounts, like chuck in a pellet, if it goes, chuck in another one, and do that for a minute or so every so often, when the koi are actively looking for food. That is the correct way to feed a koi as naturally as possible in the winter. Now, a lot of people will say, he's talking a load of well, we call it rubbish. And they say if you feed koi below 10 degrees centigrade, 50 Fahrenheit, then it will rot in their stomachs and they'll die. Well, people who say you mustn't feed koi in winter because they'll die are ignoring the evidence of their own eyes. Carp in natural bodies of water browse through the mud. They don't swim much in winter, but they will occasionally feel the need to go searching for food. They find an odd worm or something, and then they settle back down and don't do much. And happens in spring, we don't find ponds and lakes full of dead carp. So eating in winter hasn't killed off a natural population. Another evidence of your own eyes, which people sometimes ignore, those of us, and there's a growing number now because not feeding is old school technology, more and more people are feeding their koi through winter, and we don't rush out in spring because we kill all our koi and have to buy new koi. So we're a dead fish. The natural carp that fed during winter, or koi keepers who fed their fish when they're actively looking, but only small amounts. And I've now said that 3 times. Anybody who says you're overfeeding and they'll get stuffed and then they'll blow up, they obviously haven't listened to me. There's no helping people who won't listen.
What about the type of food that you tell people to feed then, Sid? If they are going to feed the fish a bit of food in the winter, what type of food would you advise them to feed?
When the koi are actively looking, feed very small amounts, chuck a little bit in. If they eat it, I give mine a couple of minutes, or I give Sue's a couple of minutes, my wife. Some people I know do 5 minutes if they're a bit reluctant and a bit shy feeders, but don't leave food floating on the surface. Chuck a little bit in. If it gets used, then chuck in a little bit more. If you chuck in some and it's not being eaten, just net it out, throw it away.
Would you advise something like a wheat germ?
It's what, sorry?
Would you advise something like a wheat germ-based food?
Hi, let me do the other diagram and I'll come on to carbohydrates.
Which one?
At time, just tell me to shut up. And
No, we're all good.
You know.
I'll do this all night if we can.
What time? What's the next slide?
So could I. Right, on the picture on the left, which has just vanished, put it back.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, Joe.
Do as you're told. Right, on that picture, I've drawn a feeding regime. Now, between 15 degrees C and 25 degrees C, I've got the Fahrenheits here for old dinosaurs, feed 2 to 4 times a day. Between 25 and 30 degrees and between 10 and 15, reduce feeding to once a day. Let them eat as much as they want during those feeds, but once a day. Below 10 degrees, now you have to read this and understand it. And most people can, but a few people are stubborn. Only feed when koi are actively looking for food, and strictly only what will be eaten within 1 minute. Now, I've now said that 5 times tonight. So if anybody says, yeah, but I don't want to overfeed my koi and they'll eat a load of stuff, then koi won't want food below 5 centigrades, so stop feeding. Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Right. What else? There isn't really anything else.
You will have, sorry, Sid, you will have some people out there, and this maybe is more of a biology question as well, but you will have some people out there that keep female fish and will be looking for the old added tale of that the females will absorb the eggs if you don't feed them over winter. Do you have a standpoint on that?
Yeah. Oh, not much. Have you got another hour?
Can you give me in 3 minutes?
I'll try to do it in as quick as possible.
Give me my husband back.
That's my
No, he's now all ours. You've lost him.
I said I'd have dinner about 8 o'clock tonight. Right. Think about this. Koi absorb eggs because they want protein. Now, female koi have put a lot of energy into making lots of eggs, and they use lots of protein. In the wild, you don't get egg-bound fish because if they're not going to spawn with all the triggers that make them want to spawn, like water temperature, daylight, and male stimulation, if they don't actually spawn, then they'll say, okay, I've got this big store of protein in my belly, I'll absorb that now. And they do that as soon as the spawning temperature, as soon as the temperature reduces below spawning temperature, i.e. in early autumn. Now, people who leave their fish till winter and think the females will absorb eggs to get the protein in winter are doing it at a time when koi are not using very much energy.
Okay.
So, my personal theory, and I've never found anybody to disagree with it, no matter who I talk to, is if you've got a female that looks egg-bound towards the end of summer, stop feeding her. She'll absorb the eggs within days or weeks at the most. If you leave it till winter, you're asking her to absorb the protein at a time when she doesn't really want protein. She might use some, and you might give her some eggs, but also carrying unspawned eggs is stressful. Why subject a female koi to stress from the end of summer until winter?
It's very true.
Yeah, no, it's a way of thinking about it. I'm not saying don't leave your koi till winter and then stop feeding them and the females will absorb eggs. It's my personal theory, and I talk to a lot of people, including some of whom are experts, and I've asked lots of people, and they can't disagree with that. Don't feed them at the end of summer.
One thing that I have found is that in again, I'm going on to the food again, but one thing I have found in aquaculture, where they're raising carp for fishing lakes and things like that, a lot of aquaculture farms use foods that are supposedly listed as preventatives for parasite outbreaks going in and out of winter. Now, if you are basically starving your fish through these winter periods, and I'm talking, between 10 and 15 degrees, where you can be feeding fish once a day, and they're looking for food. In aquaculture, they're using foods which are supposedly to deter parasites, so I presume have garlic and other things in there. Is feeding a more purpose diet in winter for these specific type of reasons something you'd advocate for, or not, Syd?
If I eat something that's good for my immune system today, it isn't gone by tomorrow.
Okay.
As I need it, depending on how much I've eaten, it will last for days, weeks, or months. It's pretty much the same with fish. I like to compare fish with human beings because we can all understand ourselves and say, is it the same with fish? Oh, that's easy. So, immunostimulants I don't need because my diet is healthy. Normally I eat it, but tonight I might be wearing it if much longer.
No, that's a good place for us to end on there.
Yeah. And what haven't I done? Oh, right. Nutrition. We've talked about that very quickly. And koi courses that I do have got all the information for tonight on there. Do you want to put that picture up before we go? And we'll
absolutely.
So let's have a look at this. So if someone's interested in a koi course, how do they go on the website? Do they contact you or?
Right, show the other one, 3-second memory, because I made that to keep my students amused. Put it alongside the koi courses, and I'll talk about the koi courses. Right, it's a bit difficult. It's a bit difficult to see, but I do KOI 201 water quality, KOI 303 in the advanced courses below, advanced filtration. Then 311 is anoxic filtration, which is another form of filtration. You'd have to do over 2 nights. And 314 advanced nutrition. And added to that will be bacteriology. Now, if you go to, what would be a simple way to do it?
I'll put a link in the video and podcast so people can click it and it'll take them directly there as well. So if you look in the description, there'll be some more. Or
if anybody wants to enroll any of my courses, send me an email or a private message on Facebook.
Yeah.
And one thing I do like to get in, I'm making no money out of this. I'm doing it all for free, which is why I'm no longer a koi keeper myself. Right. There are prices charged, which the organisation KOI has to make to keep up the running and the research budget. But all the instructors, including myself, and the support staff that do all the admin work that keeps us going, doing it for free.
Which is, it's a good place to leave there, Joe, is paying our compliments to A, Manky Sanky, and B, the work you're still doing, Syd. And it in a day and age, 2025, where everybody appears to be out to make a buck, those originals, that generation of people that do things just to help other people, is getting less and less and less. And that makes you a koi treasure, I reckon, Syd.
Thank you very
much. I don't think people such as Syd quite get the plaudits that they truly deserve in this koi industry either.
Definitely not.
And you've done a lot of volunteering on the national koi show and other times. I'm sure from reading up on your background as well. So it's not even just what we've been speaking about today either. So no, I really appreciate you coming on. I feel like I've learned a lot today, and also some things that I can actually implement in my my koi keeping. So, it'd be interesting to get a couple. Maybe I'll reach out to a couple of other of the instructors from Koi Organisation International as well, because there'd be some interesting snippets we could maybe get on some other areas of koi keeping as well. But it'd be absolutely brilliant to get you back on without giving away too much of these subjects, because it'd be great for people to go on. If there's any one of these subjects that really interests you that you'd like to know more about, then please do inquire with Syd or on Koi Organisation International. But I think it's about time we let Syd go off and get his dinner before he gets.
I think probably for Syd's health.
Yeah. But thank you ever so much, Syd. It's been my pleasure, and I really do appreciate the time. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks for all you do, Syd.
Yeah, absolutely.
No problem.
Speak to you later. We'll see you next week on the Koi Perspective podcast. Cheerio, guys.
Take care, Syd.
Cheers, Syd.
All right.